viewer call-in program focusing on results from yesterday's elections. Our guests to take your calls are Wesley Pruden of the Washington Times and Hendrik Hertzberg of the New Republic magazine.
Wes Pruden, managing editor of the Washington Times. In your column today, you start off by saying things like, nearly everyone can agree that George Bush's celebrated sex change operation blew away Republican prospects. What are you talking about?
Well, a little metaphor there, but the point is that only something as dramatic as that can compare to George Bush's denial of who he was and who he said he is. His famous promise in New Orleans that, read my lips, the Democrats are going to come to me and say, let's raise taxes, and I'll say no. They'll ask me again to raise taxes, and I'll say no. They'll ask again, and I'll say no. Turns out they asked him once, and he said yes. And I think that's exactly what happened. There was a lot of rage in yesterday's election returns, or this morning's election returns, but it was all unfocused because the voters out there in state after state wanted to slap someone down, and there was no one around. They wanted to take the rage out, and so they took it out on some of Mr. Bush's party colleagues. And I think that's the story of these 1990 congressional midterm elections.
Hendrik Hertzberg, Rick Hertzberg, editor of the New Republic. What's your reaction to this election?
Well, Wes is just talking about who George Bush is. I think George Bush is a moderate Republican. Moderate Republicans didn't do too badly in this election, if you look around. Now, is George Bush the read my lips macho tough guy, or is he the nice Connecticut Republican we all thought he was? I think he's more the latter, but he is so confused, and the message he has sent over the last year or two has been so incredibly confused that, yeah, he did get slapped down, especially in Texas.
I don't know if I'm counting right, but I've got your latest, or one of the latest election returns in the Washington Times, and going over the Senate, there's some 7 House Republicans left the Senate to run, left the House to run for the Senate, and if I calculate right, only one for sure has won. That's Hank Brown in Colorado. The others that left were people like Claudine Schneider in Rhode Island. She lost. Actually, another one, Bob Smith, left the House to go run for the Senate in New Hampshire, and he won against John Durkin. Paul Wellstone won. No, I'm looking. Anyway, let me go. There's so doggone many numbers in front of me. Just let me ask you about the general state of affairs in the Senate. Any surprises for you besides Paul Wellstone?
Well, Paul Wellstone, well, the Bill Bradley scare was certainly a surprise, that he came with an ace of losing a safe seat in New Jersey.
On the tax issue, and he came, that was, I think, the most lasting surprise, the most lasting result, assuming that Pete Wilson wins in California. I think that's the most interesting result of the whole day, was the close shave that Bill Bradley had in New Jersey. Where there, the rage against Jim Florio, presumably, is what almost cost him his seat.
Presumably. I'm not sure that interpretation really explains everything. I think it's also, I think Bradley has his own problem of being too cautious and too unwilling to take stands. But here, this year is incredible. We had this alleged anti-incumbent mood. It was supposed to be throw the rascals out time. How many incumbent senators were defeated? One.
There's a lot of things that I've tried to find things this morning here since I've been in on the wire in your newspaper that are still missing. And maybe one of the two of you has heard this on the radio on your way in. What happened in California to the term limitation?
It is now 52% in favor of it. There are two versions of it. The most radical version is the one that is now carrying by 52%, and also one in Colorado.
In Colorado, they put limitations even on the House, U.S. House members.
That's right.
Does that go to stand up constitutionally?
I'm no constitutional expert. I kind of hope it does. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea nationally. I actually think it's a bad idea for California. The reason I think it's a bad idea for California is that in California you have the initiative process, which means that the voters essentially at any given election can completely change the system any way they like. Whereas it's much harder to change the system at the federal level. And that's why I'm for term limitations at the federal level, because we've got to do something. We've got to do something. It's a bad idea on the merits. It's a Band-Aid, but it's better than nothing, the term limitations.
We're going to go to the phone shortly. Our viewers probably know better than anybody out there what's going on. If you're in Hawaii, we'd love to know the latest in Hawaii on what's happening on everything, including your House races. It appears, at least from what I see here in the Washington Times from Hawaii, that Neil Abercrombie, and if I remember correctly, he served in the House for a very brief time. Used to be a taxi driver, was quite controversial when he got here, and with 70% of the seats, the 70% of the votes in, it's 58 to 42%, according to the Washington Times. Also in Alaska, either one of you hear about the governor's race up there? Wally Hochul, Tony
Hochul won, apparently.
A very small margin, a three-way race, so it's something, a good bit less than majority, but I think he did win.
Sometimes network predictions turn out to be wrong, and you that are locally aware of what's going on sometimes know the latest. So give us a call if you live in any of these areas and some of the things we're talking about here, and give us some indication of what's happening. The farther away you are from Washington, often the less we know here, and the more you might know. Governor's races. KO in Nebraska mean anything? She lost. Politically, nation.
Well, no, I guess it's interesting. I don't think there are any great lessons, specific lessons to be drawn from that. It's also interesting that there were several women who won this time, including some. Ann Richards, of course, is the most prominent example of that. But that's quite interesting, it seems to me.
Jack McKern appears to have won over Joe Brennan up in Maine. Anything there?
Not completely expected. That was not unexpected. Certainly.
What's your biggest surprise in all this so far that you've heard?
Well, the biggest surprise to me was the close call that Newt Gingrich had and the close call that Bill Bradley had. The biggest disappointment from my point of view as a pointy-headed liberal is that was Dianne Feinstein in California, and above all Harvey Gantt losing to Jesse Helms in North Carolina.
Your biggest surprise?
Biggest surprise was, I guess, Bill Bradley's close call in Colorado, and John Silber in Massachusetts. I thought Silber would win. I'm sorry he didn't, only because I think he would have really shaken things up. He does stir up people's juices.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I was expecting Silber to win too, because most of my liberal friends in Massachusetts ended up going with Weld. I thought he'd do better among liberals than he did, because on the substantive issues, Silber is actually the more liberal candidate.
Yes, he is.
What I saw, and this again is not official because we don't have the tracking here, but looking through the newspaper, there very few incumbents were beaten. Peter Smith was beaten in Vermont, Roy Dyson in Maryland, I believe, Bill Grant in Florida. Do you have any others that come to mind in the House?
Stan Paris.
Stan Paris in
Northern Virginia, right?
Was that a surprise?
Yeah, it was. Although Paris has made a lot of Northern Virginians unhappy. They thought that he had kind of lost interest in the job. He made an unsuccessful run for governor a couple of years ago, or last year actually, and many people thought he'd kind of lost touch. It was not a total surprise.
One of the things that might be interesting for the audience to see if they haven't noticed this as you go, if we can get real tight on this, is Texas. This just goes to show you how many races were uncontested. A lot of familiar faces right here. Kika de la Garza, I'm going to go the other way, James. Kika de la Garza, Ron Coleman, see if I can't see these names on the screen. Craig Washington. You have a whole string of them here. If you go down, you have another Martin Frost, Andrews. Why so many uncontested races, Rick?
Well, this is the problem with our whole system. I think the system is sick. You've got a public which is very unhappy with Congress as an institution, which would like to throw the rascals out. But an individual voter goes to the polls and he can vote for 1 out of 537 members of Congress, 1 out of 437 members of the House. And usually that's some local person who's done a good job of keeping the local pork flowing and massaging local concerns and checking up on people's Social Security problems and all of that. And these become personal fiefdoms. They're not. These elections are not political. They're not about politics. They're about personal loyalties. They're more feudal than they are modern.
You also write in your column this morning, Wes Pruden, Michael Kinsley, this is what you say, Michael Kinsley of the New Republic, the publication that Rick edits, professed to be satisfied with Little Duke's very respectable 46% to 54%. Little Duke is Mr. Dukakis. You're talking about the way people deal with the spin after elections. Very respectable 46 to 54 finish, which shows how getting hit in the head by a few rocks can feel good if you're accustomed to getting hit in the head by a lot of rocks.
Well, I went back and looked to see what some of the spin doctors were saying in 1988 after the Dukakis debacle, and I was struck with the spin that they put on it. And the Democratic landslides generally are, greater than that. So that was just a way of saying that I guess Michael did feel pretty good because it wasn't as bad as Mr. Magoo, or it wasn't as bad as Fritz Mondale took in 1984.
Mr. Magoo is
George McGovern.
Rick, your reaction to his comment about your colleague?
I kind of agree. I think Mike was putting a happy face on an unhappy reality there.
Okay, let's grab a call. Where are you calling from, please? Go ahead. You're on the air.
I'm the first caller. Not quite right. I have a question.
Where are you calling from?
Fullerton, California.
Okay, go ahead.
Orange County.
Yes, I know.
I'd like to get a... Wait a second. I'd like to get a good answer to this question. What's to prevent, when you have these term limits, what's to prevent PAC money and the other special interests and all the different ways they raise funds for lobbyists, and for them just to not go back and forth and spend lots more money? I don't understand how that will work. I'm disappointed that Feinstein didn't win, too.
Yes?
Well, I don't know exactly how it worked out. It'll have to be worked out, but the point is that if there is a term limitation that after when the two terms or whatever it is, 3 terms are up, no matter how much money the candidate, the office holder might have, he's got to step aside and let someone else have it. And these term limitations, in principle, they don't make me very happy because I think people generally should be allowed to vote for whoever they want to for as long as they want to. On the other hand, I don't think the system was designed to work this way. I don't think it occurred to the Founding Fathers that anyone would come to Washington and make a career out of serving in Congress. And what we've got now is these people come here and they build up a powerful position, a fiefdom, as Rick says, and it's just almost impossible to get them out. You had in Arkansas, for instance, this year, one of the poor states, David Pryor, raised over $1 million, and he didn't have any opposition. And he's one of the so-called Senate grandfathers. He'll be able to keep that money if he steps aside.
Asheville, North Carolina. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, just a comment. I don't care who discusses it on the Jesse Helms race. Jesse and Harvey Gantt, both back in September. I was in a radio station and I saw some figures on money. And they both gathered together about the same amount in the same span of time. But the difference was that Jesse averaged about $86 a donation. Gantt averaged somewhere around $376, I believe it was. Why don't the pollsters, when they're looking at these things, understand that it took a whole lot more people to send Jesse that money than it did for Gantt, even though they both got the same amount? I thought Jesse would win by more because of that. Could you answer that, please?
Yep.
Well, Jesse Helms has built up over the years a huge fundraising operation. It's not a North Carolina one particularly. It's a national fundraising operation based on using national issues and national buzzwords. And he has been doing this since he was first elected to the Senate. We're now talking about since 1972. It doesn't surprise me a bit, and I don't think it's as significant as you think it is.
We have the early edition here of the News and Observer from Raleigh, brought back to us by Barry Katz, our producer, who was down there last night. And do any of you know the turnout yet, the nationwide turnout, the percentages? Wes?
I heard around 2 o'clock this morning on one of the networks, it might have been CNN, that it appears to be about 1 percentage point, at that hour, it appeared to be about 1 percentage point better than 1986, the last midterm election, which was not very good.
San Diego, go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
All the people out here in the country working to clean up Congress should be discouraged this morning a little bit, but I think you're going to find that none of them are. I've never seen such dedication in a budding political movement, and I've been through a lot of them, as I've seen in this one. And you're going to see a rededication, a feeling that we have 2 years now to do this job that we didn't really have time to do this time. I think his name is Mr. Gargan, Mr. Jack Gargan in Florida. Our big hero out here, a young lady named Celeste Mergens, who is leading the San Diego movement.
What movement are you talking about?
It's called We the People in San Diego, and this lady just is so, she knows the exact right words to stir a person.
Carl, let me ask you, if Wes Pruden's right, the percentage of voters is maybe a point above what it was last time when they were out for your elections. It doesn't appear that many of the incumbents at all were thrown out, very, very few nationwide, no matter where you look.
Well,
What gives you the feeling that you've got a chance?
The Republicans used the wrong words. I heard, I forget who it was last night, saying that the Republicans try to explain everything in 35 additional words or less, and the Democrats come up with a 4-word soundbite that plays to the crowd. Republicans have to learn to do that. However, this is not a Republican or a Democrat movement. It's a movement to clean up Congress. We've got some real bad people in Congress, and we're going to get rid of them.
All right,
We're going to get rid of them, and we're going to get rid of them. We got 2 years to do it, and it's going to happen. Mark my words.
hold on.
Can I just say that I think that's a wrong analysis of what's wrong with our country. I don't think that the politicians are the problem, or that our problem in the United States is that we have a lower class of politicians than they have in other countries. I think American politicians are pretty much as good as they are anywhere else in the world. That's not our problem. The problem is a system which rewards and punishes behavior, and you get what you pay for. And I think if we swept out the entire lot of the members of Congress we have now and bring in a whole new lot, in 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, we'll have exactly the same problems we have now, because it's not a matter of personnel, it's a matter of system.
Caller, do you have any up-to-date information on the governor's race, or has there been any further stories on who Mr. Wilson might appoint to be the new senator from California?
As far as I know, Mr. Wilson is definitely elected, and as far as the new senator, I don't know.
All right, thanks. I heard a report yesterday that Ed Schau's name was at the top of the list. Ran for Senate against Alan Cranston and lost, was a United States congressman. Do you have any insight on that one?
Don't have any inside information as a at all.
Any response to the Throw the Rascals Out group groups that are forming around the country?
I think that is he's right in that it's a very strong grassroots feeling. Now, whether they can put that together into a movement is another question. But I think that there is an incredible amount of frustration. People feel that the incumbents have built in all these advantages. They have the PAC money. They raise their salaries almost any time they want to. The tax increase that everybody else is going to be paying next year is not going to have much effect on them because their salaries are going to go up in January by about $24,000. This sort of thing it just enrages everyone, and they keep at it. They just keep giving themselves more and more perks and more loopholes. And it's true that I agree that it is the system, but they keep adjusting the system to make themselves stronger and more difficult to defeat.
Corpus Christi, Texas. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I've been really following the elections of governors, especially with respect to congressional reapportionment. And there was a lot made, especially by George Will, about how important the governorships in California, Texas, and Florida are. But I really think the really important thing to watch is how this plays in the courts. When you consider that the Republicans now have controlled the White House for the last 10 years, and they've been able to put judges on the courts who are favorable to them. Do you think that that there's a possibility that there would be any kind of constitutional rulings that would wipe out the advantage that the Democrats have in the legislatures and the governorships?
I doubt it very much, unless some legislatures and governors made grossly, obviously unjust new redistricting lines. The courts are very reluctant to get into strictly political questions, and if there was ever a strictly political question, it's the boundaries of a congressional district.
Kevin Sanders, are you there?
Yes, how you doing?
Good morning. Kevin Sanders is from Carrollton, Georgia, and he's with WPPI AM. You have your own show there, Kevin?
We have a show called News and Views, which we have not run in a while, but we will be rebroadcasting.
But you do have you have call-ins there?
Yeah, sure do.
All right, Newt Gingrich is your congressman?
That's correct.
What happened last night?
Well, the feeling seems to be from the voters that I have spoken with, and I'm not sure how much West Georgia College, which is the college here, can be a viable barometer as far as elections go, but most people didn't necessarily want Worley. It seemed they just wanted somebody aside from Gingrich. I'm not sure if that is a result of his being minority whip, if a lot of people seem to feel that he had completely lost touch with the 6th District. A lot of people seem to feel that this recent budget package vote in which Newt Gingrich came out against that, a lot of people stated to me, you'd never guess it was an election year. So
how Newt Gingrich won by how many votes?
Newt Gingrich won in Carroll County. It was David Worley won in Carroll County in the voting. It was Worley 7,570 to Newt Gingrich 6,978. So David Worley won in the Carroll County voting.
But he did not win in the district.
No, he did not. He lost by a very slim margin.
Do you have any idea what the overall voter turnout was?
I didn't get that information. The only information I have is the information that I got myself from the courthouse last night.
Okay, Kevin, thanks for joining us. Here, hold on just a second. You got a question?
I just find it a little disheartening that what's seen to be wrong with Newt Gingrich is that he lost touch with the district. It's another example of what's wrong with our system. I don't agree with Newt Gingrich. He's a conservative, right-wing Republican, but he's a guy who's tried to play a creative role in national politics, who's tried to lift himself above the local mire a little bit and to really be a national leader, and this is his reward. I mean, if he had almost lost the election because people didn't like his political views, fine. But if the reason that he almost lost this election was that he lost touch with the district, that he wasn't sufficiently parochial, that he spent too much time worrying about national issues and not enough time worrying about Social Security checks, that's not something I find particularly heartening.
Well, it might not be particularly heartening, but it is the way that the members of the House have nearly always been rated by the people in their districts. And that, I think, is also why people can be fed up with Congress as an institution, but they like the congressman they have because he takes care of the Social Security checks and he takes care of visitors to Washington when they come here from his district and that sort of thing.
Kevin, did Newt Gingrich have any reaction last night?
We didn't have anything here. He wasn't at the courthouse. He wasn't in Carroll County. As a matter of fact, David Worley wasn't in Carroll County. I believe he was in Morrow, but we didn't get any kind of a reaction. Usually I've spoken with Sheila Ward, who was his press secretary. We haven't heard any word from her. It's basically been real quiet.
Okay.
I heard it this morning on the radio.
Okay, I just had one question for you. What were the issues that caught fire that Worley used against him? And what was it that he said about Gingrich, apart from the fact that Gingrich might have lost touch from his district? As I understood from here last night, that Worley had made a big deal of Gingrich's role in cutting the deal on the congressional pay raise. Was that one of the issues that was cutting there?
That was one of David Worley's largest harangues, for lack of a better word. I had been working with Roger Marietta, who was running for this seat during the primary, and I had a chance to see several of Mr. Worley's speeches, and all of them revolved around the fact that he felt that Gingrich was getting out of touch with the people of the 6th District, and also the fact that Mr. Gingrich had been one of the major supporters of the pay raise, congressional pay raise, and basically Mr. Worley really went to town on that. He thought that had was going to be a viable issue, which it turned out it was, but instead of bringing about a good point with it, he simply went ahead and I'm sorry, I'm losing track of what I was trying to say here with in regards to Worley. But his other big thing was he seemed to feel that Gingrich shouldn't be out in Saudi Arabia, shouldn't be flying to Mexico when they had the earthquake, and should be going back to the 6th District and taking care of the needs at home instead of trying to play the part, so to speak, of the minority whip.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Kevin, for joining us.
And people wonder, people wonder why the public is dissatisfied with a Congress that won't put national questions first and won't think about the good of the country. And this is, what the voters reward is this kind of parochialism and this kind of absurdity. I mean, the issue of a congressional pay raise is a phony issue. It's an issue that's basically beneath contempt, I think. It's not, when you compare it to the real issues that this country has to grapple with. I think it's a disgrace that Newt Gingrich almost lost a seat over as absurd an issue as the congressional pay raise.
Wes, I'll get your opinion in a second. We have Santa Cruz waiting on the line. Go ahead, California.
Hi. I just want to say I'm always grateful for you folks to be there and surprised that I made it through on the telephone. But my question is a little far afield from what you're talking about. I'm a very frustrated third-party voter. I am a registered, dedicated libertarian. And it is so frustrating that even though we only get a fractional vote, that no one ever tells us what it is. It's just, you know, it's like, I heard before the election that our governor's percentage in the polls was like 7%. I have no idea whether he got 1%, 2%, none. And it's just driving me bad.
All right, thanks for the call. I noticed you had some libertarian, and you also had Lyndon LaRouche listed here. I live in the district where Lyndon LaRouche was running for Congress, and he got some votes. He's in jail. How did he get to run?
Well, there's apparently no law against running from jail. In fact, there are people who say all of them should be running from jail, but if you want to run from jail, you can. And I guess getting your name on the ballot will get you some votes. As far as the lady's complaint, she ought to call her local newspaper and ask them why they don't run those totals. We subscribe to the AP service that all the newspapers do, and we of course don't run the totals for the third-party, minor party candidates from the states. In California and states away from Washington. We will try to do that for Virginia and Maryland and the district, but we can't do it for others, and I'm sure that's probably what she's running into there.
Do you watch the Libertarian Party's activities at all?
Yeah, the Libertarian Party is a very interesting phenomenon. It's the only third party for the last generation that's attracted any sort of consistent interest at all. But, you know, our system is stacked against third parties. Basically, we've got a system in which every single office that is up for grabs is a single-member district. I mean, it's winner take all. And that means you're going to have, you're naturally going to have a two-party system. It's just built into the system. And in other countries, if you had 7% of the vote, well, that's like the German. In the German system, the Greens get 7%, and they're in the parliament. The Genscher's party, the Free Democrats, they get 5, 7, 8%, and they play a very prominent role in national politics. Not in our system. You can have, like John Anderson, got nearly 10% of the vote, more than the Greens ever got in Germany, and it was it had absolutely no staying power. The Libertarians have some staying power. And more power to them, but unless they can replace one of the existing parties, they don't have a future.
Wes, you all did a special election section It updated through the night. You're leading here with the front page story about the District of Columbia. Marion Barry is gone now? History?
Yes, absolutely. He's got about 8 more weeks to serve on his term, and then at the end of that he'll be out. He may have another special engagement somewhere next year in one of the federal penitentiaries for 6 months for his conviction on drug cocaine possession. But he is history. I thought he made a very graceful exit last night, saying that he didn't have any bitterness and he was going to get started with the rest of his life. He was also a candidate, after he announced that he would not run for another term as mayor, he was a candidate for the district, one of the district at-large council seats. It seemed ready-made for him because he was not running against anyone so much as running for a vote total. The top 2 finishers serve up on these 2 at-large seats, and he came in third, and a fairly distant third, I might say. It's very interesting because 2-3 months ago, the feeling around town here was that that had he run for mayor, he very well could have been elected, depending on what the courts did. But I think that it became obvious some time ago that his appeal, even among the blacks who had supported him so strongly over the years, had begun to fade away from him, particularly in light of the very strong race made by Sharon Pratt Dixon, who was also black.
A picture of Sharon Pratt Dixon, the new mayor-elect of Washington, D.C. Milford, Connecticut, go ahead, please.
Hello. My name is Tom Russo from Milford, Connecticut. I've been in politics, and I'm very distressed about this country today because I don't believe it makes any difference who gets into the party, because it seems to me that America is ruled in one way, the rich ruling class against the working class. If you look at every ideology in the whole world, whether it's communism, socialism, whatever, the people that run the country live off the fat of the land, and the bulk of the people support them. And I think our country today is totally corrupt with politicians. It's as simple as that.
You had an independent elected as governor, Lowell Weicker. Does that mean anything to you?
It means absolutely zero, because I think it reminds me of the Capone gangs in the old days, one party fighting against another so they could become control and control the people. And the people are going to be in the same position. Like you were just talking recently on the program here, you said that once they get into power, they just take over the people and you can't do nothing about it. It's a fixed game. They keep changing the rules to keep themselves in position all the time, like you just mentioned just earlier.
In District 5 up there, Toby Moffett, who used to be a congressman, went back to Connecticut after a defeat. I think he ran for governor. Then he became an anchorman on a television station. He apparently, according to the Washington Times this morning, has lost to Gary Franks, a black Republican.
Well, I don't really follow politics in that depth. The only thing I followed over the course of the years, and I know it was just like when I was in the Army, the non-coms against the officers, they always live high on the hog while we're in the ditches fighting against the communists in the war, in the Korean War.
All right, sir. I think we get your point. What about the race up there, Gary Franks and Toby Moffett? Did you follow that one?
Not very closely, no. But apparently Moffett lost.
According to
pretty good margin at the end. The interesting thing here is this is the first black Republican to be elected to the House since 1932, and he is a Reagan Republican.
Maui, Hawaii. Go ahead, please.
Hello. I'm calling to let you know that I am at present flying my American flag outside my home upside down. We have in the state a peculiar situation whereby year after year, time after time, the same old people keep getting voted in over and over again, no matter what it seems to be. I speak to people and they say, well, I give up on voting. I give up on the system. I give up on this and I give up on that. This time a lot of people have voted, yet it seems that Mr. Ben Cayetano goes into his voting booth there in the state capitol, and he has a lot of trouble with his little ballot cards. But when he comes out, every time the incumbents seem to win time and time again.
I understand from our percentages that we have here that Pat Saiki lost to Dana Kaka as senator from Hawaii.
Yes, and how can that be? A lady of principle, a person of forward direction, a person with vision. I don't understand it. against an incumbent who's just been there all this time.
All right, thanks. An angry man.
He is angry, and I've heard, if that anger and hostility in his voice was in the voice of the previous caller, I think what we've got here is that people are unhappy that there is not much change in these offices, particularly the House of Representatives. And that, reiterate the point I made earlier that that's not the way the system obviously was first intended to work, where people would come as an obligation, as a duty, would come to Washington, represent their district, and then go home. But we now have the system where the people are elected and they stay here. Also, one of the problems that exacerbates that is the enormous size of the congressional staffs. The Congress, something like 27,000 employees work for Congress. Of course, they have a built-in reason for making sure that their man or woman stays in office because it's a good job.
Yeah, and most of these congressional staff members are helping the member of Congress do that famous thing, stay in touch with the district, do all of these local favors. And the very same people who complain that congressional staffs are too big and that the Imperial Congress and all of that are the same people who, if their congressman doesn't stay in touch with the district, if their congressman doesn't answer the mail and doesn't take care of the Social Security checks, is going to be against them because they've lost touch with the district. So this is just a circular machine for creating voter cynicism. That's the main product of our political system these days, is cynicism and despair and anger.
Trying to see some of the new names of people in the U.S. House, which our audience follows so closely, from the 16th District of Illinois, where Lynn Martin used to hold that seat, or still does until she lost to Paul Simon, but will have to step down. It appeared with 73% of the votes in that the Democrat would take that seat. A fellow by the name of John Cox Jr., he had 59,000 votes, and his opponent, John Halleck, had 51,000, which means that a Democrat would take the seat over Republican Lynn Martin in the 16th District of Illinois.
It would appear that that's the way it will be. In addition to not making the Senate, she's also going to be giving up her seat to a Republican.
To a Democrat.
A Democrat, I'm sorry.
And Frank Annunzio, who was thought to be under some difficulty, appears to have won rather handily, 54 to 46% in the 11th District of Illinois. Chattanooga, Tennessee, go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd like to make a comment about the 3rd District in Tennessee, and I also have a question about Jesse Jackson.
All right, so the 3rd District of Tennessee on our little chart here is, tell us. It's Marilyn Lloyd?
She raised $130,000 for a campaign. She spent $67,000. Her Republican challenger raised $900 and spent $128,000. She received 53% of the vote, and she's claiming a mandate.
Actually, our toll here says 57% of the vote.
Well, this is the morning paper here, the Times. It says 53%.
This could be these could be figures taken at different times.
Although this is 100% report.
Oh, well, I don't understand. I don't understand that discrepancy either.
Mandate, Rick?
Well, I think your point, I take it, caller, is that she should have won a lot bigger if she really had a mandate. Is that what you're suggesting? No, he's not there now. Well, it's another. You only need to win by one vote, and mandate. You can those vote totals tend to be forgotten a few days after the election. The real question is who won.
Tom Talkey ran for the Senate against Tom Harkin in Iowa. Tom Harkin won, and it was the first time, I believe, that a Democrat had been reelected.
This century. First time a Democrat had been reelected, that's right, in this century in Iowa.
But in Tom Talkey's 2nd District seat, Jim Nussey, a Republican, appears to have won. And again, anybody hearing these figures that knows something different, give us a call. With 83% of the vote tally in, Jim Nussey had won 67,000 votes, 51% to 49% for Eric Tabor. That's in the district. In other words, a Republican would take the seat that Tom Tulkey, Republican, had in the 2nd District of Iowa. San Diego, go ahead, please. You're on the air.
Yeah, in the 44th Congressional District out here, we had incumbent Jim Bates, who was beaten in the election last night by a war hero who was Randy Duke Cunningham. And
a Republican.
Republican. It was about a 3,000 vote difference, and that was a district that was basically about a 20-point difference between registered Democrats and the Democrats and the Republicans. And surprisingly, Bates was a pro-choice, and Cunningham was pro-life.
Jim Bates was in the spotlight back here for an ethics charge and his having to do with sexual harassment in his office. Did that make any difference back there?
Well, it's kind of hard to say how much difference it had. I think one of the things that Cunningham was working the district, and he had kind of what we'd call a hero status, being a former Vietnam Navy pilot and Top Gun commander out here. And I think that kind of transcended the difference between the registration, and he just came off as probably a more clean-cut, all-American type candidate, where Bates definitely had the problems with the sleaze factor of that. The other surprising part is San Diego, as far as the governor's race, also another interesting point that happened. Wilson winning by 100,000 votes statewide. The turnout, from what I understand, was about 60% statewide. But in San Diego, we were right around 50% turnout. So
and he used to be the mayor of San Diego.
He used to be the mayor of San Diego. He's still from San Diego, and he won statewide, but he carried San Diego big. But if there'd been another 10% turnout here, it probably wouldn't have really been as close a race.
What about the propositions? What's the latest on those?
The latest on the propositions, basically everything went down.
Big Green. How badly was Big Green 128 beaten?
It looked like it was about 2-1.
How about the propositions to limit the terms?
140 passed Big. 131, which was the lesser of the two, it was defeated. But 140 passed, I think, about 60-40.
What does that mean? Do you know?
It means the hidden point behind it is the staffs are going to be cut considerably. That was one of the things in 140 that
staffs of the state legislature.
Legislatures are really is probably going to get cut in half. And what I understand is that the Democrats, knowing that it was going down to defeat, are already shifting a lot of their people from their staff onto the committees. But I think that it's a case. The big argument out here, and the big thing that people have been going against for a long time, is that Willie Brown is just not a very popular name. And the campaign on 140 was that it was backed by Brown and David Roberti, who was the Senate leader. And as that message got out, they had the situation that I think people realized that the politicians were trying to feather their own nest, and it now means that they're going to serve no more than 8 years. I'm sure the Democrats are probably going to try and challenge it in court and rule it unconstitutional, and that's going to be something that remains to be seen.
All right, thanks for the information. What is that proposition? What do both those propositions mean, do you think, nationwide? 128 and 140.
Well, the term limitation proposition is the one with the most salience nationwide. I think Big Green probably went down. What made the difference to Big Green was the anti-Tom Hayden factor and the campaign that was conducted based on his personality and his involvement. The term limitation thing is very, very interesting, because that's an opportunity for people to vote no on the institution of the state legislature, and by extension Congress. And it's another example of this bifurcation where people love their own representative or member of Congress, and they're enraged with the institution of the legislature, and they'd like to vote all the other rascals out. I think if you had a system, which they could adopt in California, of proportional representation, say, where instead of just voting for one member, you'd vote for a party, and that party would get that proportion of the seats, so that you could vote not just for one member, but for the legislative body itself, then you wouldn't have this sort of of fumbling in the dark to try and come up with a way to make the public will felt.
What do you think of the fact that the staffs will be cut in half? What impact will that have, do you think?
Well, you'd think it would have a dramatic impact, but the caller suggests that the Democrats, and this just means the powers that be, have already thought about that, and they'll start moving lighter people to the committee staffs, which presumably won't be affected in the same way as the personal staffs. It's got to be a scary thing for these staff people, but I would say the chances of 50% of those people actually losing their jobs is not very great, because one of the first things you learn when you go to Congress or when you go to work for Congress is how to take care of yourself. It goes from the members on down.
New York City, the Washington Times here reports this morning that Mario Cuomo only got 53% of the vote?
Well, I mean, I don't understand. The whole thing was such a shame. It was a joke. I don't know how many of us took it seriously. Perhaps we should have taken it more seriously. It was his opponent that was impossible to take seriously. But my question is, having looked now at the returns that are in, where do you people see the Democrats for the presidential election coming up? And do you see anybody that even stands a chance? I mean, Bush seems weak to me now, but Cuomo is mystifying to me. I just don't understand him at all.
What do you mean? Did you vote for him?
Yeah.
What do you mean by mystifying to you?
I never understand a word that man said, and I try, and he always sounds good, but nothing ever happens. We're in a mess here. Nothing seems to ever get done, and what I want to know is what your guests, and you too, feel, who are we going to run? Who are we going to run? Who do we have to combat Bush? And the other thing is, with Jesse Helms having gotten in, he's loathsome. How much more powerful is he now?
Thank you. Start with Mario Cuomo.
Well, it's interesting about Cuomo and some of these others. Some of the exit polling that the networks did last night, they asked people in various states where they had in that state someone who's a prospective 92 candidate. What do you think about Mario Cuomo? What do you think about Bill Clinton in Arkansas, Lord Benson in Texas, Pat Schroeder in Colorado? They got a majority of the people in their state said, fine, I like him as a governor, I like him as a senator, but not one of them got a majority in his state as a prospective presidential candidate. What that tells me is that the Democrats are really rather hard up for 1992. This may be the election that they will give and nobody comes to.
Rick.
Well, what's the old saying? Nobody is a hero to his valet. People, Mario Cuomo, Lord Benson, Bill Clinton, these people are old shoe to their constituents. In a way, they may have diminished in size in the eyes of their local constituents rather than increased. So it's not all that wildly surprising that people poo-poo.
Does the Republic like Mario Cuomo?
Well, I like Mario Cuomo. And the people at the New Republic have various preferences. Martin Peretz, the editor-in-chief, is very partial to Al Gore.
Still,
who did well yesterday.
Who did very well yesterday. I guess he
70-30?
Very well indeed. Is it true Mario Cuomo only got 53%?
53%. What's also interesting about the New York race is it looks as if London had been the Republican candidate. He could have given Cuomo a very interesting race. As it turned out, the vote was split between Cuomo and between Renfret and London.
21%.
Yes, right. Now the interesting question is, Renfret promised to move to another state. It's be interesting to go to the airport today and see which plane he gets on.
Of course, if Mario Cuomo had had a serious opponent, then he himself would have run a serious race.
No, that is true as well. But London would have made, I think, a more interesting race of it.
Runner Park, California. Go ahead, please.
Hi. I really don't have a question. I do have a complaint, though. I went in yesterday to vote at our polling place, and I have been disabled for 2.5 years, and I sat down in the position designated for disabled people. And a man came up a couple of minutes after I had been sitting there and told me I was taking too long and asked me to leave. I did not get to finish my vote. In California, it's a major problem, people getting out to vote, and I feel like my civil rights have been like I have been discriminated against.
All right, thank you very much. Add to that the fact that, I believe we had a call last night on the show in Wyoming, they have a law that the employers have to pay for the employee to take an hour off to go vote, and their voting percentage is up in the 80s.
Interesting.
What was your reaction when you heard the woman complaining about the disabled, the way they're treated?
Well, if what she said happened to her happened, she's absolutely right. They certainly ought to, I'm not sure where this idea of having elections on a Tuesday originally came from, but everywhere else in the world they have elections essentially on Sunday, or they have elections on a non-work day. That wouldn't be a bad idea for us, I think.
Next call, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Go ahead, please.
Yes, the reason we didn't change here so much was that we Sinai really didn't have any opposition.
But you did elect a Democratic governor over a Republican who quit, though, didn't you?
Yes, but do you know how many times the man has ran for governor? I mean, that's how we seem to do it here. I mean, you have to run 3 or 4 times before you make it. But what I was really wanting to know about was, is Jack Kemp going to follow the czar and leave and maybe take Wilson's place in Congress?
He denied that, but I think he did.
Oh,
no.
he did?
On Evans and Novak, they asked him that, and they said, if Pete Wilson were to nominate you, would you refuse it? I think he said, no, I wouldn't, but he said he's not going to go back to California and not interested in running for the Senate out there.
Well, another thing I was kind of wanting to know, I'm really kind of curious about how long it's going to take before there is actually what you call a class or an age warfare with Social Security. And the woman was talking about for president. I like the black man from, I think it's West Virginia or Virginia.
Doug Wilder,
the guy
Virginia.
from Arkansas. Thank you.
Caller, are you still there? Oops. I wanted to ask you about term limitation in Oklahoma. Any reaction to what she said about anything?
Interestingly, I think I found it very interesting her mention of Doug Wilder. She said West Virginia. She obviously speaking of Doug Wilder, the governor of Virginia, who is we found very, very attractive to a lot of Southern whites, where you would not only in Virginia but in the Deep South, where you might not have expected that. He speaks, he's very conservative fiscally. That appeals to a lot of people in this time of rising resentment of taxes. I think Wilder has a very bright future in the Democratic Party, and under the right circumstances, I could certainly see him being on the ticket in '92.
All right, next call, Baldwin Park, California. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Brian. This is Leonard speaking, and my first call. I would like to know, you fellows are all talking what everybody is thinking. We have got to have a change of system in this nation. The congressional system which the Founding Fathers chose was when this country was so small, they discussed a parliamentary system. Now, anything would be better than this. All the parliamentary nations are the ones who are holding their own and making money, many of them getting foreign aid out of us. Everybody, Canada and all of them around us are parliamentary systems. Japan, England, Germany, all of them, the nations that control our debt are all parliamentary systems of government. The system we have now is too big. The nation is too large. We need some way where we can eliminate all of this in the cloakroom politicians and people going in there to demand favors, financial favors, where it's all done behind the scenes. We never know. Much as C-SPAN shows the operation of our Congress and Senate, we still don't know what has gone on. Usually the decisions are made before we see them.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think we are the only country in the world that's got this system of divided government, of the executive and the legislative that are elected completely separately. We don't have one government in this country. We've got 2 governments, and that's just on the federal level. Then we've also got the state, local, the state and federal split. But we elect 2 governments. We put them at loggerheads with each other, and no wonder things are in a mess. Every other country, whether it's a British type Westminster parliamentary system, or whether it's a German type system that's got proportional representation, every other country realizes that you're better off electing a government, having that government put its program in place, and then having that government run for re-election, stand or fall on the basis of the success of their program. But at least you know who to hold responsible. In our system, we don't even know who to blame when things go wrong.
Well, I think that overlooks the fact that the United States is 50 states. The regionalism is much stronger than people here in Washington think. I think people like it that way. I think what you call parochial is what people in this country like. I think a parliamentary form of government, however much it might appeal to the political scientists and the theorists, the pundits and the serious here in Washington, would be very unpopular with people out in the country. I think that what we've got now is some kind of logjam that we've got to find a way to break, but I don't think turning the United States into a parliamentary system would really fly.
Ketchikan, Alaska. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I have two related questions about term limitation laws for Mr. Hertzberg.
Can I ask you a question about your governor's race? Have the final tallies in yet?
I'm not sure. We don't have 24-hour television up here, and the last I knew, Wally Hickel was running something like 36% of the vote to 33% of the vote for Tony Knowles.
What are you, 3 hours behind us?
Yes.
6 o'clock in the morning now?
Well, no, I believe we're 4 hours behind you. It's 5 o'clock here.
Okay, go ahead with your question for Rick Hertzberg.
Is it not true that there was a lot more turnover in the House and the Senate before the current campaign financing laws were passed? And wouldn't it make more sense, rather than pass term limitation laws all over the country, to just repeal the campaign financing laws that created this problem by making it so much easier for incumbents to raise large amounts of money from many people making small donations?
Yeah, you could. That would help. That would help marginally. I'm all for it. But even before, our turnover rate has been historically low. Even in the early 20th century, even in the 19th century, compared to what the founding fathers expected. They expected that the House of Representatives would be swept in and out every 2 years, that it would be the cockpit for popular passions, and that as people changed their political views, that the House would be swept out, the Senate would give continuity. It's turned out to be just the opposite. By the way, how's the marijuana initiative doing out there?
I'm sorry, no,
he's off. He's gone.
And I do have latest race results, by the way. The Akaka Psyche race, 55% for Senator Akaka, 44% for Pat Psyche. In Minnesota, Wellstone Boschwitz, Mr. Wellstone, 52%, Rudy Boschwitz, 48%. I know I asked you this earlier. One more thought on why you think that happened?
What, the Boschwitz, the Boschwitz race?
Yeah.
It's a puzzle, but I guess it's kind of related to what happened with Bernie Sanders in Vermont. Who won, right? And here were the two biggest liberals, the two most full-throated radicals practically running anywhere. And I don't think it's so much that they were radicals or that they were left or any of that stuff. It's just that they were they offered some kind of a change. They just offered, they were at least saying something. That's what people liked about them, I think, more than what they particularly were saying.
I think ideology had very little to do with it. Just they look, this is the most dramatic thing we can do, and so we'll go for them.
Jack McKernan in Maine, 46%, Joe Brennan, 44%. Candidate Symington in Arizona, 50%, Terry Goddard, 49%. Republican win.
Very close, too.
Wally Hickel, 39%. Mayor Knowles of Anchorage, 31%, and the Feinstein-Wilson race, 48% for Pete Wilson, 47% for Dianne Feinstein. And then,
so there's a Libertarian candidate, I guess, pulling another 4 or 5%.
I think there are three other minor candidates. It's interesting that California total, as the night went on, Wilson slowly sank beneath 50%. It looks like California was trying not to elect either one of them yesterday.
Charles Pashan, who is a member of the House Ethics Committee, lost, according to the results we had. I'm not sure these are totals, but badly lost 55% to 45%. And there was swirling around that particular race was the savings and loan controversy. Rutherford, New Jersey, you're next. Go ahead, please.
I sound a little nervous. In light of what the lady in California said, I would like to say something about Gantz and Helms. If I understood the news correctly, there were people in Durham who were trying to vote, and they had a problem with the machines, and Gantz went legally to say that the polls should be kept open late because these people were lined up to vote. Helms went higher than him, had it overthrown to try to get the polls closed early. I'd like to know, first of all, what that says about democracy, that he would even do that and not give the people. And I thought it's one person, one vote. If he can get the polls closed, even if the machines were broken, and here people are lined up. It's not just saying, well, we'll wait and see if anybody comes. They were lined up around the block to vote, and Helms tried to fight not to allow them to stay there to vote. The other thing is kind of frivolous. I'd like to know if Rick's ever been told that he's a dead ringer for Warren Beatty, except he's younger and better looking.
Frivolous? You call that frivolous?
That's what everybody said this morning.
How many times has that happened, Rick?
Well, she's made my day.
What about her earlier?
Well, it's interesting. I don't quite know what happened in Durham last night. First, they were going to keep the precincts open, and then they didn't. I suppose there will be some dispute about that today. However, Helms' margin now makes it probably less likely that it will become very contentious, because it's probably not, in all likelihood, it wouldn't be nearly enough to make any difference in the final result. I don't know what the law is in North Carolina. And that's what the courts were ultimately ruling on.
By the way, in that the seat that was vacated by Joe Brennan in Maine, David Emory, who used to be a congressman, ran again and lost badly, according to what we see here, something like 63% for Thomas Andrew, the Democrat, to 37% for David Emory. This was with 51% of the votes totals in. This is from our Washington Times, your publication. Do you have more people on election night than normal?
Oh yeah, we bring in people. The beat people who normally go home at 6:30, 7 o'clock stay around. We had people there this morning until almost 4 a.m. For the final edition. And then we had our staff people in Durham, or rather Raleigh, Boston, Austin, and Sacramento.
How many editions do you put out on a night like this?
Well, normally we have 2 editions, and this morning we had 4.
And we have the New Republic's latest edition. When's the next one come out?
Well, we go to press today, this afternoon, and
have they written already for the next issue?
Most of the next issue, of course, is already written. But right now, Sidney Blumenthal is sitting in front of his word processor doing an election reaction wrap-up for us.
Sumner, Washington, you're next.
I wanted to ask to tell the guy out in Hawaii to not despair, that the machine really does work whenever Congress passes a bill, whether it's a parental leave bill or a volunteer bill. What they're doing is they're putting strings on these volunteer bills, and that creates an entity out in the states, and then they have another base to build from, and therefore that base is beholding to that congressman or whoever put the name on the bill, and that's how they expand their base, and that's what the machine is all about. So don't despair. The machine can be broken, and it looks as if all the Republicans are going to be returned to the Senate out here, which is very good because they've blocked an income tax out here in Washington State. And Al Swift, who is the head of the Campaign Reform Committee, I think that he's going to lose. And so I, don't despair. You can't do everything in a day,
All right, thanks, Wes.
Well, that's right. You can't do everything in a day. I suppose that if you go across the country, the people who are unhappiest are the people whose candidates lost. That's always true. There is something has to be done about the system. I think there's wide agreement on that. And I think one way to do it is this term limitation. Even if the term limitation never comes about in all states, it's going to have the great result of scaring a lot of people straight, or at least almost straight.
I understand that Richard Barreca of the Honolulu Star-Bulletin is on the line. Are you there, Richard?
Yes, hello.
Good morning. Bring us up to date on what's happening in Hawaii in the election.
Well, the big race in Hawaii is obviously the race for U.S. Senate, and it was won quite easily, as it turned out, by Senator Daniel Akaka. The polls up until the last 2 days had showed the race to be a virtual tie between Akaka and Republican U.S. Representative Pat Saiki. But in the end, Akaka won quite handily, as the last-minute voters almost all went to him.
How was the turnout?
The turnout was about 75%, as I understand. The final printout for the entire statewide race is still being calculated, so we don't really know. But the early returns showed that it was going to be about 75%. Some people had hoped for it to go as high as 80, but it didn't make it.
Patsy Mink was reelected?
Patsy Mink, who was serving an interim term in Congress, was reelected as a Democrat. And our other congressional seat for urban Honolulu went to Neil Abercrombie, who's also a liberal Democrat.
And is Neil Abercrombie the same gentleman that was here before?
Yes, he was. He also, oddly enough, served a interim term, but that was only for 90 days in 1986.
Anything? I understand we woke you up. It's kind of early out there, about 4 a.m. in the morning?
4 o'clock, that's right.
Thanks for being so pleasant, even though I'm sure you'd rather have your sleep. Anything else in the election that we should know about?
Well, in Hawaii, it's a one-party state and controlled by the Democratic Party. And the Democrats had felt that they were in some danger with Republican Pat Saiki making a strong challenge in the U.S. Senate race, and that was turned back by Akaka. So you could say that it's more of the same.
All right, sir. Thank you very much for doing this for us.
Okay, thank you.
Any reaction to Hawaii? Anything unusual? Surprised that it's business as usual?
Yeah, I kind of thought that we might be in for a surprise out there in that Senate race, but right, business as usual.
Why is the turnout so high in Hawaii for voting?
It's an interesting question.
There's nothing else to do, maybe.
Of course,
on those islands.
California, it's lower. They got beaches in California, too. It's an interesting question. Anyway, it's an extraordinarily high figure.
Weaver, Alabama. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Brian.
Guy Hutt won the governor's race in Alabama?
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about. Back in June, I voted for the Democratic primary, and Paul Hubbard was not my choice. He came in last. He was the party nominee. I made my choice known locally on talk radio, and the Democrats went absolutely nuts that I was going to go that way because I'm a Democrat from Massachusetts originally. When I looked at both candidates, I didn't want Paul Hubbard. I went with Guy Hunt. The Democrats called me up and told me, no, I can't change. The Republicans called me up and said, that's great. Then I told them, no, I was voting Democrat in other races, and they wanted me to stay all Republican. Straight party ticket voting really bothers me. I think we should take a little lesson from the Olympic committees and throw out all the straight party ticket votes. In other words, the Russians always gave their people tens. Why don't we throw out all the straight party ticket voters and just take the median of the average? I think we get a lot better idea of what's going on across the country. Anyone that votes straight party ticket is going to be kind of stupid when there's like 14 people on the ballot, races to choose from. How can all of them be right in one race?
Weaver, Alabama is in what district?
Calhoun County, District 35.
I'm talking about the U.S. Who's your U.S. representative?
Mr. Haney, I'll have one.
And in District 5, Ronnie Flippo quit, and Bud Kramer, the Democrat, got 67% of the vote in Alabama, so there really aren't any surprises in Alabama.
No. Mr. Flippo did run a good campaign for governor, but didn't get anywhere, unfortunately. He was my second choice for governor. Howell Heflin went back again. As I said, now we know what happened to Mr. Haney after he left Green Acres. He went into politics. He will be our senator again. I don't know how. We're the last on every list. Every time you turn around, Alabama and Mississippi are fighting for last or first on every list. And we keep on electing the same people. I don't understand a lot of the electorate here.
You're from that part of the country?
Yes, I am.
Arkansas?
That's right. His remark that Alabama and Mississippi fight to see who's going to stand out of last place. When I was growing up down there, it was always Arkansas and Mississippi were fighting for last place. So I don't know. I guess staying out of last place is a point of civic pride. The point is that one of the things I would say is that he's talking about his disgust with straight party voters. There are a declining number of these straight ticket voters. There's very little. I was struck by last night how there's almost no rigid party loyalty anywhere anymore.
Bill Clinton, the governor of Arkansas, was reelected again, 57% of the vote, with 82% of the votes in, according to your newspaper. Still presidential tender?
Well, it was Sam Nunn who said that Bill Clinton has a distinction of being a rising young man in the Democratic Party in 3 different decades. He's going to have to, he says now he's not going to run in 92 and maybe 96. He's still young. He can do it. My guess is he'll be like Bill Bumpers, and he'll never get up the courage to actually jump in.
I'm not sure if that's true. I think he's pretty interested in a presidential race, and maybe even regrets that he didn't do it last time. And I think we could see him making a bid.
Was it called Vashon or Vashon Island, Washington?
Actually, gentlemen, it's Vashon Island. I'd like to comment that I really admire how intelligent the conversation is this evening, or this morning, wherever you are. I just want to comment, I believe in the American system, but I don't think voting is enough. I think a person has to participate by staying in touch with the representative. But one element of our democratic system has been downplayed, and that's the enormous power of the lobbies. And they've grown in Washington, D.C., and I think this is alarming because it waters down the democratic process. And I want to say one other thing. I really think that dialogue among the American people is essential, that we get to exchange the views, and that the people who we elect to Congress are aware of our views. Now, I have written to my senators on many occasions. The letters I have gotten back, it seems as if they didn't even read what I sent to them. And I feel like what's breaking down confidence in government is the disparity between the dialogue that I don't think our representatives take their constituents seriously, and I believe that democracy is watered down by too much influence from special interest groups and lobbyists. I think this is where we should look for criticism. And again, it's a wonderful opportunity to exchange views in America, and I still believe in the system, but I don't think voting is enough.
All right, thanks. Lobbies.
Well, the other guy's spokesman is a lobby. When it's your interest in what you believe in, then that's just like this fellow said, writing to your congressman. Yeah, lobbies are very powerful. That's the way our system works. There are so many weak points along the line in the legislative process that a lobby can come along, a powerfully organized interest that represents something very narrow but very focused, can come in and have a huge impact on legislation. That's one of the reasons our programs, federal programs, are so poorly designed.
Well, what he's saying is what's fueling it's the perception that the average guy out there doesn't have a voice, that the lobbies are what get the attention in Washington. They see these people come here, get elected, stay here, die here. For whatever reason, that is what is seen corrupting the system, and that's why the term limitation is, I think, going to be the next big grassroots movement in America.
You wrote this morning, by the way, when did you write your column?
I wrote that column at about 1:30 this morning. I wrote an earlier version of it for the first edition.
Did you change your mind about things?
No, the earlier was a little bit more what we call boilerplate, and this I wrote the first column before any of the returns were in.
I can't speak. You wrote, the Republicans took the licks yesterday because they're the wonderful folks, after all, who persuaded us that George Bush was not the little Duke. The real message in the returns ought to frighten the Democrats mightily. You could ask Bill Bradley, who escaped humiliation yesterday only because George Bush's White House refused to help the woman who was trying to focus the anger by herself, and that's no spin.
The Jude Winniski, who the big supply side economist, went to some of the people in the White House about 6 weeks ago and told them that Bill Bradley could be taken out, that the one who was running against him was a good candidate, and that she was making headway with her argument, don't take it out on Florio, take it out on Bill Bradley. She spent $500,000 in that race. Bradley spent several million. She came within really very close to taking Bradley out. I think if the White House had been, if the White House reaction to Winniski was, oh no, we've looked at it and we don't, there's no possibility there. The politicians at the White House, it's an incredible combination of both arrogance and incompetence, in my view. They do not want to listen to anybody. They particularly don't want to listen to anybody from the right wing of the Republican Party. And they blew a chance last night to have the big surprise of the 1990 few elections, in my opinion.
Is music to your ears?
Oh, I love to hear that. Just you and him fight, by all means.
Let's go to Beaumont, Texas next. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, to a guy from Alabama, he can take heart that he's not from Texas, and in particular the 9th District. My concerns kind of go back a bit with the whole process. Again, I'm like a lot of people, just kind of, I figure that it's an unrealistic expectation of any kind of reasonable campaign reform, but even beyond that, a couple, 3 weeks ago, George Mitchell was on David Brinkley's show, and he sits there and says bold-faced that George Bush wanted new taxes, and I'm kind of a C-SPAN junkie and the rest, and if I remember the break of the pledge on the no new taxes, he said he was willing to put taxes on the table, and he never did say he wanted new taxes. That nobody, the press, the interviewers, I'm not sure who to point the finger at, but they don't call these people on specifically what they're doing, and they allow their spin doctors to run wild.
By the way, not to interrupt, but you said that the guy from Alabama doesn't have to live in the 9th District. That's Jack Brooks's seat. What's wrong with Jack Brooks?
All right. Arrogant, self-serving, we're doing him a favor. It's anecdotal, but there's a little thing that happened down here that I ran across, and I heard it from 3 different sources from people who are in this particular incident. There's a Catholic church down here that is predominantly black, and so I've had 3 different contacts inside that black church, and I'm not, so I don't think I'm some isolated right-wing redneck. And what they did is, during the Mass, they demanded $1 from every parishioner, counted the money, counted the heads, came up short on the dollars, and extracted or extorted another $1 as an exit fee from the church. For the Democrat. For the political institution, the Democratic institution down here. Now, I've driven people who I knew were going to vote opposite from me to the polls since I've been able to vote in 1968. Down here, you got 98% of the black boxes, or predominantly black boxes, went for the Democrat, and I guarantee you that more than 2% of those particular districts live in 4-bedroom, 2-bath brick homes and drive Volvos. So it's just not consistent.
All right. Does that story sound logical to you?
Not very. He said he wasn't an isolated right-wing redneck. Probably there were a lot more of them that were just like him. Maybe that's what he means. But it was it was an interesting roiling little mixture of prejudices there that he seemed to be expressing: anti-black, anti-Catholic, and anti-democratic.
Do Catholic churches normally collect money for politics?
I don't know very much about Catholic churches, but I would say that the tradition among black churches, certainly the Protestants, the Baptists and the Methodists and all, they are very politicized. So a lot of white churches are too. I don't think it's certainly not a doctrinal thing. I think it's a cultural thing. But I would say just I don't think the man was necessarily being anti-Catholic in his remarks. It was probably a Catholic church that he was talking about. He was just giving an identification.
That's what he was doing.
That's what I think. I didn't interpret his remarks as being anti-Catholic necessarily.
Another statistic we have here in the California 37th district, Al McCandless appears to have won by 49% of the vote. and you're better at this than I am, I know, because you look so much like Warren Beatty. His opponent was the actor Waite.
Oh, in which TV show?
I was going to ask you. Ralph Waite.
Ralph Waite. I'm a little weak on my TV trivia.
Yes, you know.
I'm sorry. I know who you're talking about, but I don't know the TV
it's
show.
Not Paul Walton, is it?
It's the Waltons.
Yes,
that's right.
I'm still proud of the fact that I know that Fred Grandy is Gopher, but that's about as far as it goes.
Our resident California producer told me this morning that it was from the Waltons. Let's go to...
I did hear that.
San Diego. Go ahead, please.
Hello, I have several comments if I have time, but I called about the Big Green Initiative and a comment Mr. Hertzberg had made about Tom Hayden, the vote being against him. I've seen that in the national media a number of times, and I think it's more complicated than that. I teach on a university campus where some people even think Tom Hayden is okay, and they're very interested in the kind of issues that Big Green addresses, and they felt that it's too complicated. It tries to do things that maybe nobody knows how to do yet, and it also sets up another state bureaucracy, or at least that's the way people conceive of it. So I wanted to kind of...
Well, it's never as simple as one personality or even one issue. But do you think that if the opposition didn't have Hayden, the question there is if the opposition hadn't had Hayden to use to beat this thing over the head, then maybe these other things wouldn't have made the difference in the Big Green going down.
I think I heard that the opposition also had Bruce Willis.
No, Bruce Willis was pro-Big Green.
I mean pro-Big Green.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And there were
a lot of Hollywood stars, but I guess Hollywood stars are a dime a dozen out there.
So it'll be interesting to see how the celebrities did. Big Green, which got a lot of celebrity support and money, went down. A lot of
Everett Koop was against it.
Is that right?
The Everett Koop was the side that was against Big Green used him a lot.
A lot of California showbiz money went into the North Carolina race too for Harvey Gantt. Didn't do too well there either.
Nolan Finley of the Detroit News, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Is it true that Jim Blanchard was defeated?
Yes, it looks that way.
What happened?
Well, I would say low voter turnout in areas of traditional Democratic strength, one, and two, John Engler wrote a pretty effective tax cut message to victory.
How big did John Engler win?
Not very. In fact, that's why we've been this late in the day about calling the race.
So it has been called that Jim Blanchard will not be the governor of Michigan next term.
Well, it's in the process of being called now. We're just checking and double-checking votes. We don't want to make any mistakes. But Engler has declared victory. Blanchard's not disputing it yet. It looks like it's settled by less than one vote per precinct, or about 7,000 votes.
Did any of the stuff, the personal stuff in his life that was public out there, or, I mean, he went through a nasty divorce and all that, and also firing of Lieutenant Governor Martha Griffiths, did that have any impact on this election, in your opinion?
An election this close, it's hard to know what swung it. I don't think the divorce had much to do with it. That was handled fairly well. Martha Griffiths is saying this morning that her dumping was a major factor. She believes she could have gotten him the votes he needed to pull this off.
Now, coming up on the 15th of November, we'll be televising the Ethics Committee hearings, and your Senator Don Regan will be one of those on the other side of the dais having to answer questions about the so-called Keating 5 case. Is he in any kind of political trouble?
Well, 2/3 of the people say they wouldn't vote for him again, according to our exit poll and our other recent polling, and 1/3 think he should resign right now. So I'd say yes, he's in big trouble here. But he doesn't run again for 4 years, so who knows?
And in the Senate race, Bill Schuette, the Republican congressman, was defeated how badly?
By about 15 points.
Was that a surprise, or is that what you expected?
No, our polls, as of late Sunday, had him down 30 points. So he did better than anybody expected, but it was still a pretty big defeat.
Any other upsets?
We lost 6 or 7 state lawmakers, but it didn't change the balance of power. The Republicans now control the Senate. And the interesting thing there is it's the first time since 1970 that the Republicans have controlled both the governor's office and one chamber of the legislature. So they're sitting pretty for reapportionment next year.
Nolan Finley of the Detroit News, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to, before we take this call, any surprise there?
Well, it's interesting that, again, that constant here is Texas. It's an issue that is very difficult not to win with if you really go for it, and that's, in my view, what happened yesterday.
Are you surprised about the exit polling on Don Regal?
No, not a bit. I think the same thing would probably be true of Cranston in California. These guys have got to wrap up their careers and get back to private life.
Atlantic City, New Jersey, you're next.
Yes, I am very proud of New Jersey this morning. New Jersey has sent a message, even though we did not unseat our incumbent this time. We must not be discouraged. We must work hard the next 2 years towards breaking up the self-serving power of the Washington establishment. Regarding the terms limitation, Brian, I'd like a comment from your two guests if they know. If they don't know about what I'm going to ask, would you have someone research this and get back to us and tell us how this system could work for us? It's been brought to my attention that the U.S. Constitution gives us the power to change this, to establish terms limitations, because the Founding Fathers thought that this time might come, that the people would entrench themselves so much in the system, controlling the Congress and the nation, that the genuine popular government became impossible. I understand there is Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution that gives us the power to bring together representatives of the people in a special assembly, which is designed to break up the self-serving power of the Washington establishment. I would like to know more about this article and this power that we, the people, do have.
All right, thanks. And I can assure you we'll be looking into this issue both in Colorado, which, by the way, the vote in Colorado was 71% to 29% in favor of term limits. Wes, you're an expert on the Constitution.
I'm no constitutional lawyer at all. It could be done with a constitutional amendment which would have to be enacted by Congress and passed on to the states. It's not likely that Congress would voluntarily sign their own death warrant. It could also be done by Constitutional Convention, which we've never done, which has all kinds of problems inherent in it. However, it seems to me that it could be done another way, that if forced to, the state parties could adopt resolutions that, binding regulations that someone would have to sign a pledge to accept some kind of term limitation when they first were elected, and then breaking that pledge would be a very serious thing to do. Other than that, I think that the movement is coming. California is nearly always considered a bellwether state. Things that happen in California happen everywhere else, anywhere from 2 to 5 years later. The fact that this 141, the term limitation won in California, is one of the, I think, one of the important things that happened yesterday. 140, excuse me.
Last call, banning California. Go ahead, please.
Yes, recently we had the little problem with the budget with the president. I think that could have been solved quite simply if the president had a line item veto.
I'm going to let you go, and I apologize to you, but we are running out of time, and I've got to give Rick Hertzberg a chance to respond to that.
Well, I'm for the line item veto as well.
You are?
I'm for all of these constitutional band-aids, but what I'm really for is to scrap the whole ridiculous mess and substitute a system, a parliamentary type system, maybe model on the one that the Germans have.
You both sound about have the same degree of anger here.
Well, I'm not at all for a parliamentary system. I think that would be a strong central, would lead to even stronger, more centralized government. And I think that one of the things that we hear this morning, and one of the things that we're picking up all the time, is the anger, is the unresponsiveness of the government. And I think the more centralized and stronger the central government gets, the less responsive it's going to be. There's some things about the parliamentary system that would be convenient. But I think there's plenty of things we can do to make what we've got work better.
Our two guests this morning have been managing editor of the Washington Times. On my right, Wes Pruden. He's originally, as we said earlier, from Arkansas, although born in Mississippi. Was schooled in Arkansas, worked for the Arkansas Gazette, 1982, was a political correspondent for the Washington Times, now basically runs the day-to-day activities over at the Times and the editorial content. And Hendrik Hertzberg, who is the editor of the New Republic since 1989, has done a lot of things, including graduating from Harvard, was in the Navy, worked for Newsweek for a while in San Francisco, was a staff writer for the New Yorker, and also a chief speechwriter for President Carter. Thank you both very much for helping us try to figure out what went on in the last 24 hours.